I wanted to share a journey with you all today. And for that, we'll have to do a bit of time travel. The year is 1998. 1998, we are somewhere in the deserts of Rajasthan. The location is Longewala. It's the month of May. The winds are hot and dry. So dry that you don't even feel the sweat on your skin because it dries off before you even feel it. And we are at the Indo-Pakistan border. There is a small bunker there. In the bunker, there are two soldiers. One is the spotter who has got a binocular on his eyes and is constantly looking at the India-Pakistan border for any signs of movement. The second soldier is the gunman who's holding a medium machine gun, whose finger is on the trigger, ready to fire on command whenever the commanding officer gives the command to do so. And they are looking at the India-Pakistan border for hours and hours, hours and hours, hours and hours. So what this gunman does is, he takes the cloth off his head, the one that he was wearing, and he wipes the face of the spotter because he can't take his eyes off the binocular, and then flips the cloth upside down and ties it back again. He stays there in that position for another couple of hours, and then the commanding officer arrives inside the bunker with his little child. And as soon as the commanding officer enters the bunker, he says, "Mahal shant hai, तो सावधान रहना। अभी कुछ दिन की बात है, फिर यहाँ पे नई बटालियन आ जाएगी और ये चेक पोस्ट फिर वो लोग ले लेंगे, फिर हमारे सर से ये जिम्मेदारी हट जाएगी।" जब ये बात गनमैन ने सुनी तो वो पीछे मुड़ा और उसने कहा कि साहब, यह जगह बहुत याद आओगी साहब। वो क्या था ना, जब आए तो कुछ भी ना था, खाली कुआं था, रेत था। जो नई बटालियन आवे ना साहब, उसने बाड़ू ना देखा, बाड़ू रेत, डेजर्ट सॉइल। यो बाड़ू रेत बहुत तेज होवे साहब, प्यासे ना पानी दिखावे और प्यासा चला जावे। बोलता वो ने कभी बटालियन नहीं देखी साहब, बटालियन ने देखा नहीं है यहां पे। यो बंकर भी साहब मैंने अपने हाथ बनाया, यो बंकर बहुत याद आवेगा साहब। अपॉन हियरिंग दिस, द कमांडिंग ऑफिसर सेड कि अगर बंकर ज्यादा याद आएगा तो एक काम कर, इस बंकर का नाम रख दे। What the gunman did, he left his gun, gave it to the commanding officer. He's like, "You look after the border, I'll give a name to the bunker." He took out a box of black paint and he writes something on the wall. And while this is happening, the kid is watching. And when the gunman steps aside, the kid reads it out. He's like, "Bunker pe to Undertaker likh diya hai. Why Undertaker?" The commanding officer asks. And before the gunman could react, the little kid said, "क्योंकि अंडरटेकर कभी मरता नहीं है पापा, तो इसीलिए लड़ाई भी होगी साहब, तो ये बंकर कभी बर्बाद नहीं होगा। आज से ये बंकर अंडरटेकर हो गया." That is the art of storytelling. How you fix certain nuances and not let them go. दूजे के होठों को देकर अपने गीत, कोई निशानी छोड़ फिर दुनिया से बोल, एक दिन बिक जाएगा माटी के मोल, जग में रह जाएंगे प्यारी तेरे बोल। These everlasting words of Majrooh Sultanpuri teach you a very important lesson, that art and artists are all about giving it back to the society. When you give something back to the society, that's when your art becomes immortal, and that's when the artist becomes immortal. And trust me, the path of dreams, the path of the art is not so easy. Life will throw hurdles at you. Sometimes you will tumble and fall. Sometimes you'll have to deny yourself the rightful rights of being happy. Sometimes you'll not feel like getting up, but it's all about that. It's all about what you decide to do on that point onwards. That is what separates the dreamers from the doers. I was in Australia once, and when I was in Australia, I started off from a job of cleaning, and my father was an officer in the defense forces. So I had someone all my life who used to clean my boots. And today, I was in Australia cleaning the toilets of a supermarket. I think when I flushed that toilet the very first day, I flushed my entitlement. That I am not entitled to anything in this world because the world is sometimes unfair. I took my second job. My second job, guys, is my favorite job till this very date. I love that job more than being on the stage, to be honest. That job was that of a trolley boy. I used to push trolleys at a supermarket. So how that job used to work was, there was a supermarket, just like Shoppers Stops that we have in India, and there was a huge parking lot, probably bigger than the entire Hansraj College as of now. And there were 10 parking bays for trolleys. The customers would come, they will take the trolleys inside the supermarket, they would shop, they will put the stuff in the trolleys, take the trolleys to their car in the parking area, put the stuff back in the car, and then leave the trolleys in the parking bays of the trolleys. Sometimes they won't. My job was that I had to go pull those trolleys out from the trolley bay, stack them together, and push them back inside the supermarket so that the cycle could keep on going. On an average day, in a 9-hour shift, I would do 25 rounds of this parking lot. But it was the time of Christmas. It was December 2021. And during the time of Christmas, Australia is big on Christmas. People save money to shop. This 9-hour shift and those 20 rounds would suddenly increase to 80 rounds with 2 people working on the same shift. There were there were 2 of us in December. There was another trolley boy with me, not a boy actually, he was my uncle. I used to call him Uncle Jimmy. And one day we finished the Christmas shift and we were completely exhausted. Puri jaan nikal gayi thi. Hum wahan baithe. And I told Uncle Jimmy that, Uncle Jimmy, why do you do this job? I mean, you are almost 60 years old. Why do you still keep pushing trolleys? And he said that when I came to Australia as a young boy, I come from Macedonia. I didn't even know what English was. I had no skills. So the first skill that I learned was to put 2 railway tracks together. And when he learned that skill, he got his first job, which was in Sydney Trains. All he had to do, he was a laborer, he had to put 2 tracks together and slowly the trains would pass on that. He spent somewhere around 15 to 20 years in that job. And one day, machines took over and he was fired. Then he did some other jobs and then eventually he turned to a trolley boy. And he sometimes would boast, you know what, Jay, my name is written on the wall of the Sydney railway station. You go there and you read, Dimitri, that's me. And I would be like, why does he keep talking about that time? And he would casually ask me, Jay, what do you want to do in life? I was like, why don't you get a good job? I was like, I don't want a job. I think this is the best job that I have. He's like, why? I was like, because 1, it keeps me happy. 2, it keeps me physically fit and helps me earn the minimum wage that helps me keep my house running. So I don't need another job. He's like, no, when the family responsibility falls, तुम्हें better job लेनी पड़ेगी. I was like, no, I don't have to. So we would go back and forth on this. I would constantly look at Uncle Jimmy. I would see the wrinkles in his eyes. He was tired. Sometimes I would see tears in his eyes, but he would try to hide those tears with his smile. And one day when we were doing that job, one Christmas shift got over. We were tired and exhausted again. Uncle Jimmy broke down. And because his English was not good, he said that my wife is broken and I need to take her for repair. What he meant was that his wife is sick and he needs to take her to the doctor, but he doesn't have enough money. So I was like, I'll give you money, whatever you need. He's like, no, I don't need your money. You are earning just like me. I was like, then what do you need? He's like, that is exactly why I was telling you to get a job. And then I was like, I have to be honest with him. I told him that I want to be an artist. He's like, so are you going to sing or are you going to dance? I was like, no, I want to tell stories on stage. So he's like, oh, so you're going to be a writer? I was like, yes, I want to be a writer. He's like, so why don't you narrate something to me? I was like, whatever I write is not in the language that you understand. And he said that art has no language. You say it and I will try and understand. And he said it with so much conviction that it inspired confidence in me. And for the first time, I narrated something that I had written in front of somebody else. I was like, मुझे दो इतनी उलझने के जीतने में जान लगे, और फिर जब जीत लिखूं तो पूरा आसमान लगे। कि मुझे दो इतनी उलझने के जीतने में जान लगे, और फिर जब जीत लिखूं तो पूरा आसमान लगे। मैं जिंदा भी ऐसे हूं कि सोचोगे जिंदा कैसे, मैं मुर्दा भी ऐसा कि जान में जान लगे। From that day onwards, I started living dual lives in Australia. One life that kept my soul happy, the other life that kept my wallet happy, and to some extent my relatives also. I was following my pseudo dream that the society taught me. But my heart was not happy because I was still looking for satisfaction. So I made a rule. Rule number one. No matter how tired I am, no matter how exhausted I am, I will come back from the shift, I will sit on a chair in front of a table, and I will write something. Then I made a rule number two. Rule number two was that I will never judge how good or bad I have written. I will just write. Because being the best was never my goal. It was the pursuit of becoming the best that I was looking forward to. And that was the difference. So I kept writing, kept recording. My voice started spreading. मुझे इंडिया से मैसेज आ रहे हैं, we love your voice, we love what you write. पाकिस्तान से मैसेज आ रहे हैं, we love your voice, we love what you write. Canada, Australia, you name it, and I was there. And honestly, that was the best phase of my life, not because I was getting compliments, because that was not the goal. It was because all of this was happening while I was living a completely anonymous life in a country where nobody understood what I was doing. So they were not looking at me from the eyes of somebody who was famous. They looked at me from eyes who was human. And that was the difference. So I kept going. And one day, I was listening to this motivational speech of Matthew McConaughey, where he says that there are always two wolves inside of you. You just have to make sure that you feed the good wolf more than the bad one. So that's exactly what I did. COVID hit. I lost 4 family members within a week. And there I was stranded in Australia with its borders closed. I had 2 choices. I could leave Australia, come to India, and never see Australia again because the borders were closed. Or I could come to India, or I could stay in Australia and live with the survivor's guilt. So I called up my father. I told them that, okay, Papa, I want to come back. He said, no, stay there. I'm here. I stayed there with that survivor's guilt. I was angry. I was mad with rage. So I took that rage, put it on a page, and took that page to the stage, the script. And one day when I could not take it, I went to Uncle Jimmy. I was like, Uncle Jimmy, I want to go to India, but I'm not sure. He is like, okay, listen, I've lived my entire life, but here's a piece of advice that you will need for the rest of your lives. People who say that do things because so that you don't have regrets later in your life, they are lying. You'll always have regrets in your life, but you'll always have a choice. The choice is that you get to choose your regrets. So you choose your regret wisely. You can go back to India and you can miss Australia, or you can stay in Australia and miss India. But remember, if you go to India, that's where your dream is. And I asked him, what is my dream? He's like, to get up on the stage. I was like, no, my dream is not to get on the stage. My dream is the affirmation of the art. My dream is when I close my eyes, take that deodorant bottle in my hand, all I imagine is I'll say something and the audience will clap, hoot, shout. That clap, hoot, shout is the affirmation of an art for an artist. That day I took a call. That day I took a call. I came back to India. I did my first show in Delhi in front of 500 people. And it was the worst show that I have done ever in my life. Not for the audience. The audience still liked it because they love me. And that is how love is. You tend to overlook the bad qualities in a person. Then I did my second show 5 months later. Another 500 people. I disappointed myself again because I was not feeling it. And I was like, okay, twice I've done this in Delhi, cumulative audience of 1100 people. Everybody around me is happy that I'm getting on the stage, but my dream is to not get on the stage. My dream is the affirmation of the art, the clap, the sound, and the hoot. I'm still not getting it. So what I'll do is I'll go to Chandigarh. So I went to Chandigarh. I was walking on the streets of Chandigarh trying to look for an auditorium. And there I was on the 24th of December 2022, a day before Christmas. But a year later, after I had my last conversation with Uncle Jimmy, standing in front of 350 people, and that's when I did the first show of Mohabbat Zindabad. And when I did that first show of Mohabbat Zindabad, I got back on stage. Once I finished my show, I went to the green room, and all I did was cry. Because that day I felt something. That day I felt something in my heart. Because that day, the audience clapped, the audience shouted, and they took my name. My art was affirmed. Then I came to Delhi. Ankur Bhargav approached me. For those people who don't know who Ankur Bhargav is the biggest producers of stand-up comic scene in India. One of the reasons why stand-up comedy is what it is today. He approached me and he told me, have you ever done small rooms? I was like, what are small rooms? Like, what shows have you done? I was like, the first show that I did was in front of 500 people. The second show I did was in front of 500 people. The third show that I did was in front of 300 people. He's like, you perform in front of 15 people. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. Not a big deal. I sat in front of 15 people. 15 minutes into the script, my t-shirt is wet. My BP is low because getting a reaction out of those 15 people is like a death sentence sometimes if your work is not good enough. Those 20 minutes on the stage when things are not working, they feel like 200. And that's exactly what I did. That day when I got off the stage, I cried. The next day I got up on the stage, small room, I got down, I cried. Third day, small room, I got down, I cried. I kept crying, but I kept going. Kept crying, kept going. 20 shows later, I got my first standing ovation. Then I was like, okay, I've nailed it. I think this is it. Did my first 200-seater show. Big names from the stand-up industry were there to watch the show. I finished my show. I thought I had nailed it. I got down from the stage, went up to one of the biggest stand-up comics in India, and I was like, how was the show? And he was like, this is not going to work. You need to work harder. I was on a stage high, and he said this. My entire confidence came crumbling down. But the thing was that he also told me what I need to do and how I need to do it. The constructive feedback. And I would like to take this moment to show my gratitude towards the stand-up comedy industry, because the kind of feedbacks, the kind of constructive feedback that you guys have given me have helped me to make my show what it is today. I took that feedback, I went up on the stage today, and I went to Ankur Bhargav. I was like, you watch my show. He's like, I'll watch it in the biggest auditorium that Delhi has. I was like, what? He's like, let's do Kedarnath Sani, a 1,000-seater auditorium. I was like, nobody's going to come to watch me in a 1,000-seater auditorium. We put the show down. It was sold out in 24 hours. When it was sold out in 24 hours, I had a huge responsibility because then now I'm standing in front of 1,000 people who are looking at me. Now they have paid for it. Now when I have to give something, I have to give it back as an artist. So before the show, 15 days before the show, I went to Rajasthan. I went to Longewala. I went to the exact same bunker where my father took me as a child. The bunker still stands. There are signs of Undertaker on the wall. It's not completely visible, and that is what his art was. I came back, I did my show, I got down from the stage, and here is my 2 cents for all the dreamers in the house. Beware of the dreamers who dream with their eyes wide open, because they may act on their dreams with their eyes wide open. Now, whenever you feel that it's not working, whenever you feel that it's not possible, whenever you feel that, all right, this is not working out for me, all I want you to do is close your eyes Imagine your dream and look for your affirmation of art. Because when hard work combined with smart work, combined with the technicalities of the art, what comes out on the stage is nothing short of magic. And magic only happens when your eyes are closed. So make sure you do that. Because now, when you look back at the story, there was a guy who was just pushing trolleys. Had Uncle Jimmy not pushed him to go back to India, he would not have done the show. If a trolley boy can do it, you can too. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.